Alright guys, so we got a Ranger XP here. It's a XP 1000. One of my customers wants a winch mounted in here, and also a horn, so that when he's working his cows he can bump his horn, get his cows out of the way, getting in and out of the gates through the pasture. Anyway, a lot of times what most people do is they'll use the mounting brackets inside here at the bottom that Polaris sets up, but I really don't like it down there. One of the reasons I don't like it is you get off into a mud hole somewhere, you got to get down on your hands and knees and dig the winch out just to use the winch. So to me that's just a bad idea. I like mounting my winch up higher. So what we're going to do today is we're going to, the smaller winches don't come with the winch plate, you got to buy it separately. So I ordered a winch plate and I have it put in here, but I'll probably put a support in the back to support the winch plate. Probably use a piece of angle iron rather than flat bar so it doesn't give too much when you're using the winch. But plan on, if I've got room, I'm going to mount the winch right in here so that if you do get in a mud hole, even get down, get your wheels buried in the mud, your winch is out of the mud. That's the way I prefer to do it. So we're going to do that, and then also we're going to mount the air horn up underneath here, and I'll video that as well. So that's what we're going to do. Alright guys, so here we have it. The products we're going to use, it's a Oga air horn by Road Shock. We'll hook that up, see how it sounds. I'll need to run some wires on the switch set to make that work. And then here you have your 2,500 pound Badland winch from Harbor Freight. And I'm going to see if I can't put in some links at the bottom of this video so you can go online and order it and have it shipped right to your house. Anyway, you got your 2,500 pound Badland winch with the rollers in the front that your cable's going to go through. Pretty simple setup. You got a hot wire and a ground wire coming off your box that goes to your winch, and a hot and ground wire goes to your battery. A power supply, a remote control for the winch, which is really nice. Some of your bolts to bolt your winch onto the plate. This is a plate I had mentioned earlier that you have to order separately for this small winch. It's just a lot easier because the rollers bolt to the front, the winch bolts to the plate, and then you can add a piece of metal or two to weld it into the front of the buggy, and it just makes it a lot easier rather than trying to fabricate this plate to bolt up perfectly to this little winch. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. We'll start with these products, and I'll put some links on there. If you guys like what you see, you can like, subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. Just scroll down to the bottom, hit like, and hit subscribe. Or you can go to the top in some cases, click on the three dots, hit like, subscribe, and click on the links below the video and order your products today if you want. Okay, I wanted to show y'all something real quick. Sorry about the finger. Alright, so I wanted to show you something real quick about this winch. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and put your two bolts in that hold your winch on. And as you can see, just a couple of bolts in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to pre-fit this thing. Your cable should be wound all the way up. All you're going to do is pull this out and turn it so that it can freewheel. So you can pull the cable out a little bit and be able to get to it, and then I just pop it back in. Now I was able to shove this hook through here. It was a little tight, but instead of forcing it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pliers here so I can get in onto this little C-clip. Pop that C-clip out, pull the pin out so I can run it through. I'm tired of fighting it. Normally you can pull it right through, but it's not working this time, so I'm going to pull the pin to get the hook all the way through here so I can go ahead and bolt this thing up. And the reason I want to do that is I want to do that ahead of time so that I can set it into place on the side-by-side, make sure I've got plenty of clearance before I go mounting this plate. So what I'll do is I'll do this first, then I'll pull everything back off of it and make sure it fits over here. Pull everything back off and off the plate, grind it down so I've got some bare spots to weld to, and then start the fabrication process. Alright guys, so I've got your pulleys mounted onto the mounting bracket. It comes with long bolts and short bolts. Obviously you want to use the short bolts. Mounting your rollers to the front of the bracket that you're going to weld on, or if you want to bolt it up you can. I'm probably going to weld it, so all you have to do is unbolt the winch. But as you can see, we got a problem. It's not going to fit up in there. Even with the bolts out, it still wouldn't fit up in there, and it won't fit in here either. Through the grill, I was hoping it would, but it's not going to. So rather than unbolt the front bumper, I'm going to see how easily I can pull this front grill out, get it out of the way. And so I'll take a look at that real quick, see what we come up with. I've got to pull this cover off anyway. In order to put the horn on. Actually, I don't want to set that over there. I need to move that. Alright, we got a couple of clips. Clip here. Okay, if I remember correctly, this piece comes off. You can take that whole front grill off. So, let's see. Back a little bit. I'm gonna be careful with that. Looks like this section comes off. Oh yeah, look at that. Now that was easy enough. I'm digging that. That'll make things go a little quicker. Just two little clips. Now we got plenty of room. A nice pleasant surprise. So what we'll do is we'll measure this thing, make sure we get it in the center, and that should work pretty good, unless you get it at a real steep angle. As long as you don't get it at a real steep angle with your winch cable, you won't be rubbing this bottom bar. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and these braces back here are a little lower, so I'll need to support this mounting bracket so that it fits. Yeah, I think that'll work. So that's where I want it. I want it basically right in here somewhere, preferably so that this thing is set up as far out as possible. And then the other thing you want to check is make sure your wires, these two wires here, are long enough. I'd like to put the cables and mount the electrical box back on the inside. So we'll go from there. So the next step is just pull this back off, clean these brackets up, get us a piece of metal so that this thing will be the right height. And I'm not going to video that because I'll need to go find a piece of metal that's going to fit. More than likely we'll find something that we can weld on across here. So at the bottom of this plate sits right on that, and then this front bracket will rest right on here. So when you're winching on that thing, it won't twist or anything. And it should be good to go. So we'll go from there. Okay, so I've found a piece of metal I want to use. I was going to use some light gauge tubing I have, but it would probably been strong enough. It's thin gauge, 1 by 2 inch, 2.5, not sure. 2 inch, 1 inch by 2 inch. I was going to lay this in there because I need to be an inch off the bottom with my bottom plate because I need an extra 1/4 inch for the pulley so it doesn't hit. So I found a piece of channel iron that's 1 inch. So the channel iron is going to be much stronger. So I'm going with the channel iron. And so what you want to do when you're cutting a piece of steel to make it fit really tight, these braces coming up off the top of the bumper angle out. So always leave it a little long so that you can get in there on the grinder and get a really good fit. And I've got a really good fit for that channel iron, so that's going to be plenty strong. It's actually stronger than the steel it's being welded to. So that'll be good. What I'm going to do now is try to get my position. I know I'm high enough. So now what I'm going to do is line the holes up, throw a bolt in the back of this through the winch plate. The front hole that bolts the winch on is going to have to go through the channel iron. So I need to see how far into the channel iron it's going to be. I want to make sure it doesn't hit right on the edge. So I'll space that out real quick, kind of play with it a little bit, and then from there I'll get my left to right, make sure it's directly in the center before I drill a hole in that. So that's what we're going to do now. So let me use my soapstone here. Got my bolt to drop down into the back. Good there. So this is going to line up no problem. I'm not worried about that. And that's right up against the other thing is make sure you got clearance for your winch once it's all welded in place. So I'm touching it right here. So I'm going to back the winch out about 1/8 inch to make sure I've got plenty of clearance there. And then mark where the center of this hole is on the outside, which will give me plenty of room. Yeah, that'll give me plenty of room there. Line that up. Let me pull this back out. Don't drop that. I'll show you what we got. Just want to take your time anytime you're fabricating. So here's my piece of steel that I've cut to length and angled it so it'll fit in good and tight. Now what I'm going to do with this piece here, once I get this hole drilled, I've got the mark right here, so that'll show me how far back. And what I did is I basically used this hole as a marker. I had my bolt in so that these holes will all line up according to that winch bracket. So now I know how far out from this edge to cut that hole to make sure I've got clearance. So at this point what I'm going to do is I'll take a speed square and mark back, see how far that is. Which if you burn an inch, that's a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to go back to 5/8, make sure I don't get it in too close because I've only got about an 1/8 inch to work with for it to come in farther. So I'll grab the center here and measure back 5/8 of an inch. We'll just do that real quick. Soapstone. You guys probably, I don't know if you can see this down here, probably can't. So we got 18 and a half, so that's going to be 9 1/4 inches. We'll mark 9 1/4. Take my speed square. I love a speed square because you got a nice lip there to work off of. And then from there, we'll come back 5/8 of an inch to make sure I give myself plenty of room. Alright guys, so right here is where these two lines intersect is where I'm going to drill my hole. And I'm going to drill it for this hole. So, when that's lined up, when the bolt comes through, it's not hitting this inside lip. And I've got room for the nut as well. I'm not sure, take one of the bolts, line it up here. You can see if it's drilled in the center that you're going to have room in there. So you'll be fine. So I'll put this on the drill press, drill me a hole there. And then once that hole's drilled, I'm basically good to go as far as ready to mount this thing. So what I'm gonna wind up doing is welding this bracket straight onto here. But I need to make sure I've got a hole in for the front part of the winch. So by finding center on this piece, that'll line my winch up into the center in between here. It should line up fine. Of course, you have one end sticking out because of the electric motor, but you want your pulley to be lined up directly in the center. Once I drill that hole, what I'm going to do, this thing will be ready to be welded in. But what I like to do is I'll go ahead and wire weld this thing, take any rust off. It's a piece of metal that was sitting outside. Take the sharp edges off just so I don't cut myself. And then I'll go ahead and prime it. Get this thing completely primed so that when I go in, I may knock a little bit off where I'm going to weld, a little bit of that primer, so all I got to do is touch up the weld when I'm done. I prefer to do it that way, but before I weld it in, I'll clean these edges up here and get that tacked into place, and then I'll set it down, make sure everything is still going to work. Go ahead and mark it where it's setting. Make sure I'll pre-fit the winch again, make sure it's going to work, pull that back out of the way, and then go ahead and weld this thing out, set it down in there, weld it up on each side, spot weld it, bolt the winch in, and then from there we'll wire the cables in, mount the electrical box up in here so that we can get to it with the remote control, tie in the wires, and be good to go. So yeah, just take your time when you're cutting. Always leave it a little long so you can take it on the grinder and get a really good fit. For instance, in here you've got a weld where these risers are coming up. So if you cut it just flat, it's going to be too tight. So I'll just round the edges a little bit so that when this lays down in there, you've got a nice tight fit, and you'll be good to go. Alright guys, a couple little quick tips. If you're going to paint something, go ahead and wipe it down with some mineral spirits. And I just got some spray paint here from Walmart. I like the paint and primer combo. It works pretty good just for doing little projects like this. So basically what I did, I got the hole drilled, went ahead and took it outside. It's really wet out. It just isn't even dried yet. But anyway, just wanted to get it, the majority of it covered. And since it is wet out, one thing about steel is steel holds moisture. So once I wire weld it, took the rust off, I wiped it down with the mineral spirits, and then took it outside, laid on a piece of metal, flipped it upside down, sprayed the bottom side, flipped it back over. And if you're worried about those edges, don't worry about it because you're going to touch it up after you get it in the buggy. But flipped it back over, sprayed it, and now, a little tip, take a good blow dryer and blow dry that thing. It'll pull the moisture out of the steel and dry the paint. Again, we're not building a grand piano. We're just putting a winch on. So, you know, you don't have to have perfect conditions to get the job done. Okay, so I got the piece of steel in there. See if it's nice and tight, nice good fit. So, what I'm going to do at this point is go ahead and lay the bracket up on this piece of steel. Line that hole up. Now what I need to do is I'm going to make sure this is square. I'll use speed square to put on this side. Make sure it's lined up. Drop a bolt in that bracket right here. I've got my bolt in there. I'll make sure this piece here is square and mark it. Then I'll pull it off, tack that up, drop the piece back in here, and tack it on each side, and then bolt up the winch. Make sure all my bolt holes are lined up. It's going to work good, and weld it out. Be good to go. Okay, so just want to show you real quick. I've got this thing prepped. Basically took the paint off along the edge because it's going to get welded along the top edge. Then on the back side, the channel iron is going to be running this way, so I've taken the paint off on both sides. Want to make sure you prep that, take the weld off, especially using a MIG welder. If you're running 6011 stick rod, it'll burn through the paint, but still if you want a good weld, best thing to do is take the paint off. Use your MIG welder, be a nice clean weld, and it'll hold up good. Alright guys, so got it welded up on 4 corners. Should be plenty right there to drop it in and weld it out on the ends. Just kidding. It's welded on the back. So I got stitch welds along the back on each side. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and clean these up. Put a coat of paint on it so it's all touched up, and then I'll drop it into place on the side by side. We'll get it dropped back in here. We'll get it dropped back in, weld it up, and bolt the winch in and start running the wires. Okay, make sure you've got something to block the BBs from coming in. You definitely don't want to hit that, any BBs to hit that aluminum radiator. You'll blow holes through it. So basically what we got, I've got it welded in. You know, one of the tools that work really well for getting the paint off before you make some tight weld like that is this tool right down here. DeWalt's a good tool to use, but it's a pencil grinder. So it really helps when you get it in here and you want to try to take the paint off before you make your weld. It works really well. So yeah, I've got a decent little weld though. Good tie-in on both sides with my little MIG welder. I like using a Hobart. I've got a Hobart over here that it's a Ironman 230. Just an awesome machine. I mean, I love this thing. It's a MIG welder. I use 75-25 mixture, argon, I believe it is. Anyway, I don't know. I just fill it up when it needs it. But yeah, good machine. Gets the job done. So now what I'll do is I'll leave this plastic up here, get in there and touch up those welds and bolt the winch down, and then we'll start on the wiring and getting the horn in. Alright guys, so we got it bolted down. Looks good. Right down over the top. Yeah, looks good. Got a nice tight fit. Got it bolted in. Channel irons welded on from bumper to bumper, both sides of the bumper. Nice and straight, off in the middle. So yeah, good to go. Now we've got 2 wires. We've got one up underneath here. Got one right here, one on the other side. They're color coded. We'll run the cables up in here, mount the cables up in here, and mount the electrical box, and then tie it into a positive and ground. Be good to go. Alright guys, we'll give this thing a try. I'll hold this down till the blue light comes on and hit extend. There we go. Be careful when you retract it and just bump it when it gets close, because it does jump up pretty far. Got everything in nice and tight. Came out to be a good fit. Got the wires wired into the main ground, the main power. Got them all tucked in nice and clean. And she's good to go. That's it for the winch install. Next we're going to install the horn. Alright guys, so Honey Bear, this might scare you. Alright, so other than putting the hood on, I got the horn mounted on the inside here. Got it all wired in. It works good. That scare you, Honey Bear? Sorry, baby. Anyway, works good. Done. Got the winch in, got the horn in. Turned out pretty decent. Let me pull this off and take you over there and show it to you. So there's your winch. It's got the channel iron mounted in. Right off the bumper. Got it all nice and tied up to the grill. Wires coming right back into your ground and positive. And then your horn. Got the horn mounted, tucked up underneath here. Run back to the ground and positive, and also to a switch. And I used the switch that I had right there. It's actually an old ignition switch, push button ignition for like a race car, but works good for the horn. And that'll do it for this video. If you like what you see, hit like and subscribe. It's free to subscribe. And thank you for watching Ozark Mountain Garage.